Thank you for listening to Fate Weaver, written by Elias T. Least. If you enjoy this novel, consider donating $1 through Cash App to $EliasLeast. And now, Fate Weaver. Chapter 12. A Difference in Understanding. As Cyrus scooted closer to the fire, he inquired, "Can you describe to me these ability score ranges and what those numbers represent?" Queen responds, "Yes, I can explain the ability scores and their corresponding meanings. Ability scores range from 3 to 18, with 10 representing the average ability score for a human. A score of 3 signifies extreme weakness or ineptitude, while a score of 18 indicates an exceptional ability or gifted talent. These ability scores are utilized to determine a person's aptitudes, skills, and effectiveness in various situations throughout their life." Cyrus questioned further, "Can a score exceed 18? Queen responds, "Yes, in some instances, an ability score can surpass 18. However, this is typically achievable only through magical means, such as using an item that temporarily enhances the score. And by magical, it is only what you would consider magical in your current form of understanding. The maximum ability score for a person without magical enhancement is 20, which can only be attained at higher levels and with substantial investment in that ability. Furthermore, certain races or classes may possess abilities or traits that permit them to exceed the normal limitations of ability scores. However, these cases are generally exceptions rather than the norm." Cyrus probed, "Can you provide an example of something a person with an 18 in strength could accomplish?" Queen responds, "A person with an 18 in strength would be considered exceptionally strong, surpassing the strength of most individuals they would encounter. They would be capable of executing feats of strength that would be unattainable for someone with average or lower strength. For instance, a person with an 18 strength score could potentially lift and carry heavy objects, such as boulders or furniture, with ease. They could bend metal bars or break chains using only their hands. They would also inflict substantial damage in melee combat with heavy weapons or their fists. However, it's crucial to understand that merely possessing a high-strength score does not automatically exempt a character from potential consequences when performing these feats. Risks or consequences may still be present, and the character's other abilities and skills will also contribute to determining their success." Cyrus asked, "Interesting. Can you give me a comparable example of someone with an 18 in intelligence?" Queen responds, "A person with an 18 intelligence score would be considered exceptionally intelligent, surpassing the intelligence of most people they would encounter. They would possess a vast reservoir of knowledge and the capacity to process and analyze information swiftly and accurately. For instance, a character with an 18 intelligence score could potentially solve intricate puzzles or riddles with ease and recall extensive amounts of information from memory. They would be able to rapidly learn and comprehend new and complicated languages or skills. However, just as with strength, it's vital to recognize that possessing a high intelligence score does not guarantee success in all situations. Other factors such as social skills, emotional intelligence, and experience will also influence a person's success." Cyrus spent a few minutes eating his wolf meat and pondering all the new information he had received. He was certain that without his intelligence being drastically enhanced by Queen, he wouldn't have been able to comprehend any of what she had just described to him. This led him to another question. "Can you tell me some trivial fact that I don't know in a way that I could understand it, and then tell me the same information in a way you would describe it to someone with a high intelligence score?" There was a brief pause before Queen responded, "It would be pointless to explain something to you that you could not possibly understand." Cyrus chuckled and said, "Come on, my Queen, humor me." Queen paused again. Cyrus would have sworn that he felt her sigh. "The world you believe you inhabit is not flat. You wouldn't fall off the edge because there is no edge to fall from." Cyrus raised his eyebrows, surprised by this revelation that contradicted his basic understanding of reality. "Okay, I understand the words, but I can barely grasp the concept. Are you saying we are on the outside of some sort of round ball?" Queen responds, seemingly reluctant, "This is futile. You do not possess the cognitive capacity to engage in this conversation." Cyrus urged, Come on, we've come this far. Go ahead. Hit me with the same information that I just couldn't possibly grasp. Queen hesitated again before responding. You currently dwell within section 3,032,626 of the 2,362,280 sections of the astronomical structure known as Dyson Sphere 42 that surrounds the white dwarf star LP 145, 141. Cyrus had no response because he had no idea what Queen had just said. He tried to analyze the individual words, but it was no use. He didn't understand it. Queen responds, I told you so. Cyrus inquired, so that's what a person with an 18 intelligence can understand? Queen responds, no, that is something a person with an intelligence score of 14 could understand. Cyrus was stunned at this revelation. If that was the difference between a 10 and a 14, then what would the other attributes enable? He knew that he must have the ability to understand the world and how it works, if he was going to be able to advance himself enough to save his mother from another temporal warrior. He had only 1 day of experience and had already advanced this far. There is no telling what someone would be capable of that had more time to delve into their own possibilities. I have made my decision. Advance my level and increase my intelligence ability score, Cyrus said with the utmost confidence. Level advancement engaged. Please relax while these changes take place. Cyrus was already sitting down, so he crossed his legs into a comfortable lotus position and eased his mind, preparing for the influx of new knowledge. As Queen began feeding new information into his mind, Cyrus felt a world of ideas and possibilities opening up before him. He realized that his previous understanding of mathematics was merely a rudimentary grasp, and he was fascinated by the complex equations and concepts that now unfolded. Theories and formulas danced in his mind, and he eagerly absorbed them, craving more. Astronomy piqued his interest, especially as one of the words Queen had mentioned earlier caught his attention. The term star was unfamiliar, but as he delved into the field, he started to comprehend the concept and its significance. He wished he could observe more of these celestial bodies before moving on to other, more advanced theories. He was now at level 2, and his experience was 20 out of 200. His ability scores were all at 10, except dexterity, intelligence, and wisdom, which showed an increase to 11. Cyrus immediately noticed some numbers that did not match up with what he was expecting. He examined himself and realized that he felt sturdier. The physical changes that took place when he advanced a level was incredible. In that one simple shift, it was as if his feet were more grounded to the dirt beneath him. He stood up and flexed his muscles, and he didn't think the strongest man in the village could have pushed him down, not because he was any stronger, but because he felt more connected with himself. Cyrus asked, Queen, what are these attribute changes in dexterity and wisdom? I was expecting a change in intelligence, but not in those. Can you explain? Queen responds, Absolutely. The inaugural weapon Temporal Warrior that you received as a reward for completing your first secondary quest is a specialized weapon that has the effect of raising ability scores. Currently, it is affecting both your dexterity and wisdom by 1 point. Cyrus began to get tingles. Are you saying that this weapon can affect more than this in the future? Queen responds, Yes, that is a correct assumption. As you gain levels as a Temporal Warrior, this specialized weapon will have more bonuses. Again, this effect does not come from the weapon. It simply allows the abilities within you to be more prominent. If you did not have the ability to increase these scores, then the weapon could not increase these scores. I understand. Queen, thank you for your patience and your help. If it wasn't for whatever brought us together, I would possibly be dead along with the other villagers. Cyrus said in humble honesty. Queen responds, It is a possibility that they still live. Cyrus stoked the fire one final time before he found a comfortable place and quickly fell asleep. Chapter 13. Investigation of the Scene. Cyrus slowly opens his eyes, the crisp morning air filling his lungs as he takes in his surroundings. He can see the blue winter sky through the broken roof and white clouds streaked across its canvas. For a moment, he forgets the weight of the task that lies ahead of him today. But soon his mind clears from the morning fog, and he remembers. A sudden chime rings through his mind, and he instinctively knows that it's a signal for a quest. His heart races with anticipation and possible dread as he waits for the details to come flooding in. His mind buzzes with images of beasts just outside his makeshift hovel and other endless possibilities of what awaits him. He takes a deep breath and braces himself for the next words from Queen. Queen's voice filled his mind just as expected. "Greetings, Cyrus. Your village requires assistance. A primary quest is available for you to undertake. Do you accept the quest?" "My village? My village requires a lot of assistance. Can you give me more details about the quest?" Cyrus asked. Queen responds, "Of course, this is a primary quest. It will require you to investigate the remains of the village and find any clues that will lead you to the disappearance of the villagers." Cyrus still had no idea how this all worked. He shrugged as he said, "I was going to do that anyway." Queen responds, "That is correct. Your intentions were already set to proceed with these actions. Do you accept the quest?" "Are all quests just actions that I would do anyway? Like saving the villagers that were in distress, killing the wolf that was going to attack me regardless, and now trying to find my family and friends? What is the point of asking me if I am going to do whatever it is that I am already about to do?" Cyrus asked, truly intrigued by how she would answer. Queen responds, "This is another instance of a conversation that you will not yet understand the answers to." Cyrus was aggravated at this response and stood up to start moving around and get ready for his day. He stomped his feet and clapped his hands to get his circulation in motion. "Come on, Queen, dumb it down for me." There was a long pause compared to every other question Cyrus had ever asked as Queen responds, "I am an artificial intelligence that has been embedded within your mind. I have the capability to unlock your potential as it becomes available to you. It can only become available to you as you progress in certain aspects of life. It is very important that you understand you are progressing. This is the point of experience and quests. It affects your subconscious in a way that allows me to help you access that potential." Cyrus nodded his head. "I understand." Queen responds, "No, you do not." Cyrus laughed and said, "Okay, you're right, I don't, but I'm glad that you explained it to me anyway." Cyrus took a deep breath and began his investigation. He walked along the strangely familiar path and started with his own home, which still lay in ruins from the storm. The roof had been ripped open, and snow covered everything that used to belong to him and his mother. As he approached the rubble, his heart heavy with grief, he couldn't help but feel a sense of overwhelming sadness wash over him. Memories of his childhood flooded back to him, and he could almost hear his mother's voice calling out to him from within the wreckage. He shook his head, trying to push the memories away, and focused on the task at hand. He began to sift through the debris, looking for any clues that might lead him anywhere. He carefully examined each piece of broken wood and twisted metal, hoping to find some sign. With every passing moment, his frustration and desperation grew. But then, he notices that the small box where his mother kept her trading coins and the small baubles that she held as mementos of her past had been strewn about. Some of the items were missing, and the ones that remained were broken and scattered. Cyrus felt a pang of anger and fear rise in his chest as he realized that whoever had taken his mother's belongings must have had something to do with the villagers' disappearance. With renewed determination, he began to scour the wreckage more thoroughly. He scanned every inch of the debris, noticing even the tiniest details in his search for answers. He found no more. Cyrus took a deep breath and headed to Alma's home, where he had saved her from certain death not so long ago. As he entered the home, he was again hit with a wave of nostalgia, as memories of his childhood spent playing in the house flooded his mind. As he looked around, he noticed that Alma's sacred items, which she had always kept on display, were gone. He took a deep breath and pushed his emotions aside, focusing on the task at hand. He scoured every corner of Alma's home. His mind was sharp, and his senses were heightened as he examined every object in the house. Finally, as he was about to leave, he noticed a small object tucked away in the corner of the room. He picked it up and examined it closely, realizing that it was a small piece of red fabric. He opened his dimensional storage and placed the cloth inside. Cyrus felt a sense of confusion and frustration wash over him as he searched for clues about who had ransacked the village after the storm and taken everything and everyone. He couldn't fathom who would have done such a thing. The village had no enemies. They had no concept of ownership of land, an idea that he had recently come to understand through his queen's help. Traders only came through the village a couple of times a year, and he couldn't imagine anyone having the means to devastate his small community. The concept of major cities and large armies were also a foreign idea to his people. Cyrus's mind raced as he tried to make sense of what could have happened. They couldn't have just left because they would have taken all their sacred items and not just the ones they saw as valuable, and they would have never tossed the others around like trash. As Cyrus realized that it had to be a foreign group that was responsible, signs of struggle became more evident all over the village. He went into one of the homes of the warriors of his village that was barely touched by the storm, but had been ransacked. The broken pieces of furniture and the signs of struggle were obvious. Cyrus's heart sank as he saw the destruction and violence that had taken place in a home that he considered safe. He couldn't help but think of the warriors who had lived there, men who had fought and bled for their community, and now they were nowhere to be found. Cyrus clenched his fists, feeling a growing anger and determination within him to find those responsible and make them pay for what they had done. Cyrus decided that it was time to gather what he could for his journey. He knew he had to go to the next nearest village and inquire with their elders about any information they might have on the raiders who had devastated his own village. He quickly searched his ruined home, looking for any supplies or equipment he might need for his journey. The broken pieces of furniture and the signs of struggle were obvious. Cyrus's heart sank as he saw the destruction and violence that had taken place in a home that he considered safe. He couldn't help but think of the warriors who had lived there, men who had fought and bled for their community, and now they were nowhere to be found. Cyrus clenched his fists, feeling a growing anger and determination within him to find those responsible and make them pay for what they had done. Cyrus decided that it was time to gather what he could for his journey. He knew he had to go to the next nearest village and inquire with their elders about any information they might have on the raiders who had devastated his own village. He quickly searched his ruined home, looking for any supplies or equipment he might need for his journey. He found a small round stone that she had picked up by the river. He remembered that day and smiled at the thought. She had marveled at its beauty. He put it in his pouch around his belt. There was a sturdy leather backpack, but he didn't need it now that he had access to his dimensional storage. He did grab a flint for starting fires, and an extra cloak made of thick wool that would keep him warm in the harsh winter climate. This day was almost gone, so he would return to the smithy and prepare the rest of the wolf. Once he was satisfied with his supplies, he reset his fire and bedded down for the night. He would set out on foot towards the next village in the morning, determined to find answers and bring justice to his village. Chapter 14. The Next Village. Cyrus's eyes flickered open to a strange sensation of disorientation. The village that he had known like the back of his hand felt different, somehow alien, as if it had been warped by a powerful spell. He rose from his makeshift bed and stoked the fire, the dancing flames casting eerie shadows on the walls of the smithy. The scent of smoke and dried meat wafted through the air, and Cyrus gathered the jerky he had prepared and stored it in his dimensional storage. As he emerged from the broken building, he took in the surroundings with a newfound sense of sadness. Everything felt off-kilter, and he knew that no matter what happened, life would never be as it was. With a heavy heart, Cyrus set off on his journey. Having never completed the rites of manhood, he had never ventured far from his village. He knew the general direction of the next village, but had no idea how far away it was. As he stepped beyond the village perimeter, He felt the familiar chime of the quest notification ringing in his mind, and he couldn't help but wonder if he would ever get used to it. Queen, his AI companion's voice echoed through his mind. Greetings, Cyrus. An exploration quest is available for you to undertake. Do you accept the quest? Without even considering it, he mentally accepted the quest that was offered, and knew that the exploration quest would reward him for finding the next village. All he had to do was get there. The days stretched on, the cold air biting at his face and hands as he trudged through snowdrifts that reached up to his knees. He was quite sure that he had gotten lost a few times, and the journey felt never-ending. The nights were cold and miserable, but he had grown up with the men of the village teaching him the ways of survival in these harsh climates. It was difficult, but he was able to push forward. He spent most of his time learning from Queen. The artificial intelligence was a superb teacher and could answer any of his questions that he was able to ask. It seemed like every answer led him to another question. She would bring up visuals that would explain lessons over math, science, and even the history of his own people. They had a language long ago, and although it had been forgotten, some of the symbols could still be recognized in their ceremonies. After 4 days of travel, the sun finally emerged from behind the clouds, and the snow began to melt. His trudge through the snowbanks turned into a trudge through the mud, but he was grateful for the warmer weather. Another 2 days of walking passed, and the plains of his people slowly began to disappear into a forest line in the distance. He could see smoke rising far ahead, and his heart leapt with the hope that he had finally arrived at the next village of his people. He pushed himself to walk faster, and as he got closer, he saw children playing and happy faces. It was a wondrous sight that he had not known that he would miss. Cyrus walked into the village, and the chime of success rang in his mind. He checked his display and saw that his experience had gone up by 75 points, now reading 95 out of 200. There were no other changes that he noticed as he made his way to the elders' meeting house in the center of town. He hoped to finally find some answers to the questions that had been plaguing him. He walked into the building, and the elders were there, sitting around the fire discussing whatever it was that elders discuss. Cyrus had never been in this situation before, and wasn't sure what the protocol was, so he simply bowed as he had seen adults do and stated his identity. I am Cyrus, son of the village under the shadow of the mountain. One of the wisest elders looked up at him but asked the others, Why is this child who wears the garb of his ancestors in our elder's house? Another replied, Yes, we do not speak to children in this sacred place. A third elder spoke up, It is agreed. This child must be a man before he has the right to speak. And with that, they ignored his cries and explanations of his village being destroyed and his people gone. He knew that it was absolutely no use in trying to change their minds. He was not yet a man in their eyes, and therefore had no rights as an individual. He may have well been a dog yapping in their sacred hall. Cyrus felt a mixture of emotions as he left the elders' meeting hall and walked towards the first warrior's house. On one hand, he felt confident in his abilities, both physical and intellectual, and he knew he could easily pass any test that was thrown his way. On the other hand, he felt frustrated and even angry at the archaic traditions of his people. He couldn't understand why he had to prove his manhood in such a way when he had already proven himself in countless other ways. As he arrived at the first warrior's house, the one who was responsible for the trials of manhood, he saw that it was decorated with the symbols of their tribe, and although it was similar to his own symbols, there were variations. Cyrus could now see the differences in the symbols were indeed a form of writing, just as he had discussed with Queen. It would be an easy thing to teach this to his people and greatly advance their ways of life. Inside the house, the first warrior and several other tribesmen seemed to be waiting for him. He wasn't sure how they knew he was there, but they were ready for him. They were all wearing ceremonial garb and had stern expressions on their faces. Cyrus could feel their eyes on him as he entered the room, but he refused to let it shake him. The first warrior spoke in a serious tone, outlining the trials that Cyrus would have to face to prove his manhood. Seek the egg of scarlet hue from the red dove's nest up high, where the sun kisses the horizon and azure paints the sky. Then a thorn you must procure, from the water rose it grows, by the river's gentle whispers, where the silver water flows. Lastly, venture through the wood, where the wild forest boar resides. Claim a tusk from this fierce beast, as your courage it derides. Cyrus listened attentively as the details were laid out before him, and he did not hesitate to start his journey. The tasks seemed familiar, similar to the rumors of the trials in his own village, but the specifics were different. He knew that these tests would require strength, endurance, and skill, all of which he possessed in abundance. It did strike him as odd that the warrior spoke in rhyme. This would have been awe-inspiring to his 15-year-old self before the mental transformation that he had experienced. Now, however, it was a simple rhyme that was more annoying than anything else. He could feel himself disconnecting with the people that he held dear. With every detail that he learned, he saw another aspect of where these villages could be so much more. Thank you for listening to Fate Weaver by Elias T. Least. Feel free to subscribe to the channel for exclusive original works from this author. All donations and proceeds from this work go directly to him. Cash App $EliasLeast. Copyright 2023.